for coming out today. I'm really excited about our Zoom today. We've got some great guests here. We obviously Matt Tendler. Good to see you. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well. Excited to have our guests on a call today, and obviously have a good discussion about the thing that we know and we love, hockey.
Absolutely. Laurent, Lavigne, how are things up in Montreal these days?
Yeah, things are great. It's starting to move. I think I saw some article now that it's beginning of June that it's going to start reopening. So that's in a few days. We'll see what happens. It's still up in the air, but
hopefully soon.
Exactly.
And you're doing some synthetic stuff virtually right now, or?
Yeah, I'm doing a few sessions a week, mostly on weekends. So just, guys are asking me to hop on and just do a skating session. So that's what I'm doing.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I want to introduce our guest for today. We have Jason Power. Jason is the goalie coach in the USHL for the Lincoln Stars. He's the goalie coach in the NAHL for the Kansas City Scouts. And Jason's another one of these coaches that, social media is a great thing in certain times. And Jason and we connected online a couple of years ago, developed a really good rapport. And I was honored that he invited me out to the Omaha Lancers goalie development camp last summer. And it was great working with him and learning from him. And we have a lot of the same messages about, staying up on your feet as long as you can, holding your edges, getting back to your feet, leading with the eyes, trying to get stick on puck. So Jason, I want to thank you for coming out tonight. How are things out in your way in Missouri?
Things are going well. Thanks for having me, guys. So weather's good. Can't complain.
Awesome. So what I want to do today is we've got a lot of goalies, ranging from 2007 birth years and up, and we've had a lot of questions about junior hockey. We have some tier 1 goalies on here, some AA goalies on here. So I really thought Jason would be a great resource to talk about the differences in the leagues between the USHL, NAHL, and even tier 3. But I first want to pass the mic over to Laurent to talk a little bit about Canadian juniors, because the two systems are definitely different. They're definitely different. Yep. So Laurent, can you let's talk a little about what's the junior situation once you're done youth hockey around 15, 16 years old? What are the next steps in Canada for and specifically in Montreal for goalies?
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking more about the Quebec, side of things. So in Quebec, right after high school, because in high school you have a lot of school leagues. You have about 4 or 5 school leagues that are completely different, right? That are looking for different, paths. And then right after that, your options kind of shrink. Your options, you go towards either, because over here we have a school system that's called CJEP. So you have one year kind of less of high school. And then you would have CJEP for 2 years, and then you would go straight on to university afterwards. So university or college. So over here, your CJEP option would be a good one. You have the D1, and now for next year, they just added a D2 actually. So it's going to be interesting for sure. But the D1 is definitely a good option. You got a lot of Espoir guys. Espoir is the midget level sort of things, and then you have a lot of Espoir guys and AAA guys that go towards the collegial, option. Right after that, you have the junior AAA team or junior AAA league. That's a great option as well. You have teams, all over Quebec there that are competing in that same league. And for sure, your other option would be definitely like that prep thing, but then you would go more towards, going to the US and stuff like that. So it's those are kind of your only 2 options, because then other than that, right now there's a few programs in Quebec that are starting to develop like U20 teams and stuff like that, but there's not that many. And I think we compete against the States a few times in those leagues. So it's really like those are like big leagues, but I think in Montreal or in the Montreal area, we have one U20 team, I think, and it was created like a year ago. I think it's going to be the first season next season. So anyways, it's so like I said, like your options kind of shrink in that in that sort of department there, and then for sure you have the queue there, but then the queue is it's definitely something else. Um, but yeah, so you have those two options, right? The junior AAA option and the CJIP option that are great. If not, I think you can play the U18 as a first year in CJIP. So you could play in a U18 team in the LHBS league for 1 year when you're in CJIP. So those are basically your options, right? So I think that's pretty much all I got for Quebec.
Awesome. Thank you. So,
Sure.
Jason, I passed the hosting duties over to you so that you can share your screen. Jason has a great PowerPoint that he's going to reference through. And the one thing that we've all talked about, Matt, we talk about it a lot. Laurent, we talk about it. Jason, you and I talk about it. Is there's not just one path. There's a lot of different paths. I mean, Matt, you took a path. Matt, actually, before we get to Jason, Matt, can you tell us a little bit about the path you had? You went to prep school, then you went up to Canada. Tell a little about your path and how you got to where you were.
So just like everything else, you kind of start off with this plan of how you're supposed to get to where you want to go. And then just like anything else in life, sometimes you have to overcome and adapt. So I started playing juniors for the Low Flyers, which was at that time was the Atlantic Junior Hockey League. I played, that was a few years back. That's when the AJ and then the EJ were pretty much competing against each other. And it was pretty much the battle between the Tier 3 Junior A's or Tier 3 Junior B's or whatever you want to call it at that time. Next year, I was going to be a senior in high school. I got the opportunity to go play at South Kent School, which is now the Selects Academy. That was our first year when I was there to go play at the Division I prep. After that, I was there for a year. Prep school was awesome. They just didn't have the schooling for me. I was a very exceptional student, and I went to pick my class. I only had 2 classes offered me, so I wasn't going to pay 40, 50 grand to go to a school that I couldn't even go to school. So I went back home, went back to the Little Flyers. That year, we played in a tournament in Mercyhurst. We played the Brockville Braves out of the CCHL, Central Junior Hockey League. We got in a little fight. I got ran. I had to defend myself. I got kicked out of the game. Next thing you know, I had an opportunity to chat up with a scout. They offered me an opportunity to kind of come up. And then I went from there. I was in Brockville for a year. The next year, I had some personal tragedy. A good friend of mine was murdered right at the beginning of the year, which is terrible. I talk about real life. So I had to go home for that. I came back. I lost my starting position in Brockville. Could never get it back. I lost it to Clark Saunders, who went on and played at Nodak, and then he played in the East Coast, and then he's playing over in Europe. Phenomenal goalie. I got traded to Ottawa. Again, same thing, CCHL. And then after Christmas, they fired the coach, sold the team, and I had to go back home to play for the Little Flyers. So I was kind of all over the place, ranging between discussions at Union, Colgate, Vermont, all the way down to after I got traded from Brockville to 0 Division I schools from there. So, everything kind of happens for a reason. Things play it out the way that it should. I can tell you it's not fun getting traded or transitioning to two or three teams in your junior career, but it happens more than not. So you have to be used to it and you have to be ready to handle it. But it's definitely not easy. And the junior route is very, very competitive whenever you get there. And there's a difference between different levels of juniors. Like that AJ, at that time, we had some really good players. There were some Division I guys, some guys that got drafted. But then it kind of dwindled off down to the lower rank for the 3rd or 4th line guys. But the top-notch guys were good. Then I went up to the CJ, and again, a little bit of a different level. That was a very offensively gifted league. At the time, a lot of Division I prospects, guys that played there and then went on to the OHL or Quebec Majors Junior. One of the guys that was there when I was there was Wayne Simmons. So again, good level, but there's nothing compared to juniors right now like the USHL or the North American Hockey League anymore. Those are the 2 best leagues that are out there, hands down, in my opinion, to be able to produce players to go on to either college or pro.
So let me ask you. So you mentioned this, the CC, the Central Canadian. Can you explain like what is that in terms of? I mean, everyone's heard of the USHL. Everyone on this call has heard of the NAHL. You know, not a lot of people have heard of the EHL, the USPHL, NCDC. There's a lot of letters out there. So
Sure.
what exactly is the CCHL, and where does that stand compared to other junior leagues?
So if we're looking in general terms, let's just look at the United States first, right? So everybody knows that the top tier one junior A is USHL, right? That's the plateau of where you can play juniors in the United States. The second fiddle to that is the North American, right? Again, a lot of players can play there, play at a high level. Once you get underneath those two levels in the United States, it kind of spreads out a lot. You have the USPHL, you have the EHL, you have the Western States, just to name a few. You know, then you have NCDC and plus 18 AAA that are all kind of underneath that umbrella of where some of those kids in that age group can fall within. The CCHL, in my eyes, is what at that time close to the North American Hockey League. To be blunt, in that time, the North American Hockey League was going through some challenges with teams and finances and everything else. So it wasn't as competitive back then as it is now. The CCHL, I think, was very much more competitive then than it is now. Still produces a lot of good players, a lot of great players, but it's not as much of a Division I powerhouse producer as, let's say, the North American Hockey League is today. So USHL in Canada probably is OHL, Quebec Major Junior, but it's a difference between one is technically pro, one's still amateur. The tier 2 in Canada, which is CCHL, Alberta Junior League, Saskatchewan, BCHL, you know, those are on that level. I think that BCHL is probably to the North American Hockey League for tier 2, junior, tier 2 in Canada versus the United States. So the CCHL is probably just a tick underneath that.
Okay. So I think this will be a good segue since we talked about the USHL and the NAHL. Let's pass the mic over to Jason Power. Again, Jason, you have the host ability, so you can feel free to share your screen. For those attending, you obviously are muted, but if you have questions, please put them into the chat as soon as you have them. That way, I don't want to wait till the end and have an influx of questions all the way at the end. Put them in the chat, and we will get to your questions. So, Jason, floor is yours, my man.
All right. Can everybody hear me?
Sure.
Yeah. And the screen, did it transfer? I know we were having some.
We're good to go.
All right. So first off, thanks. I want to thank you for being on the call. Part of the presentation I put together today really was, you know, I go around the country and also do a lot of coaching education, and then I do a lot of seminars for players. And so this was taken from that, and we kind of hybrided it. A lot of times, especially with goalies on the call, they want to know, what does it take to get to juniors? You know, when I go to showcases, everybody wants to be in the USHL. No kidding. Everybody wants to be in the North American League, but they sometimes don't understand what it takes. So this kind of slideshow starts with that. And as we go through, you know, I'm going to talk over, but you'll just see random things off Twitter that, you know, I've seen or Mitch has seen. I just saved them and put them there so you're not just staring at a blank screen as we talk. But the biggest item for me is, you know, big rocks. And so when we mention big rocks, you know, everybody here wants to go on and play in those two leagues. And sometimes they don't understand the sacrifices that needs to be made. You know, when you start talking about goalies in both of the USHL and North American League, you know, we're going to talk about the symbiotic relationship between the two leagues here in a bit. But, you know, the one commonality that those guys have is they've sacrificed and they understand what it took to get there. I deal in my area, there's a lot of high school goalies that would love to go play juniors, but they have no idea what they're really asking. And so when you start talking big rocks, you know, the big thing for me is, when you wake up in the day, are you thinking about playing goalie? And are you thinking about being the best and being in those two leagues? You know, what you eat for breakfast, is that the right thing if you want to take some guy's roster spot? You know, when you stay up at night goofing off on Fortnite or hanging around on Snapchat, you know, worrying about your fires or whatever it is, you know, your streaks, is that really a big rock? Is that really what it's going to make you get to the next level? You know, you heard Matt talking about all the AAA leagues and so forth. You know, there's probably 150 AAA teams in the country. There's not even 40 teams between the USHL and North American League. So when you start looking at the 150 AAA teams that are each floating 2 goalies, you're 300 goalies. That doesn't include Europe. That doesn't include Canada. So when you look at the 40 teams in these 2 junior leagues, that's 80 goalies. That also, Euros and Canadians fill a lot of roster spots. So if you want to be one of those top guys, you've got to start looking at the big rocks in your life and micromanaging all the little details that you do. I'm a big believer that children are products of their environment. So this kind of segues off the big rocks. I myself, both my parents were active duty in the U.S. Air Force, so I've lived around the country thanks to them. I grew up in a pretty, I think fantastic lifestyle, living off, tarmacs and flight lines overseas and watching every jet with an F or a C fly by me as a kid. So it was pretty awesome. But I got a lot of my personality from my dad. When people meet my son, they can come out and they go, I didn't know the kid's name, but I know that's your kid because he acts just like you. I'm like, oh, great. So knowing that kids are always products of their environment. And how does that relate to you as goalies? It gets back to that big rock thing. When you start thinking about when we go and identify some of the top guys, and I've worked, I think 8 of our national camps, and you got to go through and interview all the goalies. It's like, hey, tell me about the paint in your basement, the house. Oh, it's perfect. Okay. And then some kids will go, oh, it's completely destroyed. Why is it destroyed? Oh, I'm bouncing pucks off the wall and tennis balls and, doing the things that need to be done to be a better goalie. Okay. You're creating your environment. The kid that's got, he's at the rink every single day. Even if he's just watching hockey, he's soaking himself into the environment. If you take a look around right now as you're listening to this call and you're not seeing anything that really promotes you being a better goalie, you need to change your environment if that's what you want. Flat out. You're not going to go be a pilot if you're not hanging around planes. You're not going to be a high-end goalie if you're not breathing hockey and it's not around you 24/7. Now, I'm not saying, hey, you have to focus on this 12 months a year. I get everybody needs breaks, but it's pretty rare some kid's going to come off the farm, not near anything hockey, and just excel. You need to sit there and be a product and create a better environment. Parlaying off that, we also talk about creating cultures. It's kind of the buzzword lately in youth sports and all pro sports, but it's probably the best one. Culture is the greatest thing. Culture can carry a team. Culture can kill a team. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so when you start talking about your environment, you got to start talking about your culture. A lot of goalies I meet, they go, oh, I want to come play in that league so bad. I go, okay, tell me why. And like, oh, the team I'm with sucks and the coach doesn't do anything. That's not a healthy culture. And I can't verify that the culture you're coming from is bad. So when a goalie's talking to me and downplaying, what is to soon be his ex-girlfriend or his ex-program, that scares me because I don't want energy vampires. I want positive people. The world's got a ton of negative people in it right now, and I don't want to be one. Like when I take goalies on my team, I basically interview you like you're going to come live in my house with, my kids. Would I trust you at home with my daughter? Would I trust you to babysit my son? That's a big thing for me. A lot of times when I go out scouting, people always, comment and they'll send me messages. They're like, I noticed you brought your son with you. I go, yeah, I did. Because that little 10-year-old is probably my best gauge for who's a good citizen and who I want in my culture. Because when I'm talking to a goalie, if they can treat him with respect and just talk to him like he's just one of them, that says a lot about his character. When I've met some goalies, they look at him and they just kind of want to turn their back and just tell me how great they are. You failed your interview. So you want to submit yourself to good cultures. And if the program you're with, you don't feel is the proper culture, do what's best to help change it. Okay. Sit there and don't blame coaches. Go to your coach and be like, hey, can we try doing this? Hey, I saw this video on YouTube. Can we try this drill? Hey, I'd like to start working on this. You can change the culture that can make you a better environment by being a positive person. And I submit to that probably more than anything. When you sit there and you can go online and watch, Simon Sinek did a thing where he interviewed Navy SEALs and starts talking about, the development process, and to where Navy SEALs would rather have a guy that they can trust compared to the guy that might be the best for the job. And that's the culture they want. Same thing. I do the same thing when I'm interviewing goalies. Mitch mentioned last year in Omaha, we had the goalie development camp. You know what? That was an interview process for a lot of those kids. There's 6, 7 of those kids right now that I know have got invites to USHL main camps, or North American League camps, and 2 of which I'm going after. And the reason is because that whole weekend was nothing more than an interview. Obviously, everybody could play goalie. You got the invite. And when you go back before that for our main camp last year in Omaha, we had 20 goalies. We had studs in that camp, and the whole thing was an interview. If you couldn't play goalie, we weren't going to invite you. And this year it's the same thing in Lincoln. It's kind of, we have a main camp and there's an open camp, and it's just, you're not getting the invite if I don't think you've got the snuff. I know you can stop a puck. That's not what I'm looking for at this point. I'm looking at all the off-ice stuff. I want to know how you carry yourself. I want to see you pass, the test. And are you a good citizen? Are you the guy that's going to be in that locker room that makes us or breaks us? Because you got to remember there's two goalies. One of you is in net. The other guy's basically got to be the team, not a cheerleader like rah, 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 but he's got to be the glue that helps the coaching staff hold it all together, and his composure. This is a big thing for me. This was my father's big catchphrase. He commanded a lot of units, went through a couple of different wars, So P6, on my Twitter, I always have a hashtag. I put it on all my hockey sticks, on my kids' sticks. You might have seen when I said no filter on this one. So P6, piss poor planning prevents proper performance. It's the biggest one. The biggest life lesson my dad always taught me is, other than an act of God, we can prevent things. If you had a bad game, it's not because somebody was just a miracle worker. You probably didn't prepare. When we go in, at the junior level, every game counts. There's no such thing as winging it. I deal with youth coaches and they just wing a practice. We don't have time to wing practices. At junior hockey, it's like, hey, you know what? If I want to keep my job, we got to win some hockey games. And you know what? Sadly, in junior hockey, even if you can join a team and make them win games, you sometimes don't get to keep your jobs. But everything is prepared. The standard week in both the USHL and North American League, I refuse to admit or refuse to accept that there's not a team that doesn't have this. Monday, you're doing nothing but video of the last weekend. Tuesday, it's the same thing. By Wednesday, you start looking at video from the future. So we're looking, if in Lincoln's case, let's say we're playing Omaha on Friday, that whole week is just consumed with watching what they did the previous weekend. So by the time Thursday, Friday rolls around, you're able to show your whole team, hey, here's where we made mistakes last weekend. Here's where we had positive effect from last weekend. Here's where the other team that we're going to play this weekend made their mistakes and had their positives. And it's just planning, 100% planning. When I hit the ice with my goalies, I want to go, hey, you were phenomenal this week at X, Y, and Z. We're lightly going to touch it. Where I wasn't happy was A, B, and C. So we're going to focus a lot more on A, B, and C. By the way, the opponent's pretty good last weekend, had a couple of squeaky goals off D, E, and F. We're going to work on D, E, and F. You can prevent a lot of damage, okay? So we always want to plan. Same thing when you're going into tryouts. You'd be amazed. I text kids or I get emails and I message back and go, hey, tell me your workout routine for the last 3 months. While this global pandemic's been going on, nobody's been on the ice. So you have no excuses for your preparation. And I get kids that go, I haven't done anything. Gym's not open. Shit, I didn't realize you had to go in a gym to work on how to catch a ball. I didn't know you needed to go in a gym to work on squats, that you can do with buckets of sand or your lawnmower. I mean, you can make things up. I haven't been in a gym. More importantly, I'm not an athlete anymore. My daughter hasn't been in a gym, but you can see all the videos. She's outside flipping, tractor tires. She's got the ropes. I'm scared of her now. She's been working out so much. But some kids are working out, other kids aren't. I had one guy that was like, Coach, I'm outside every day. I've got 2 kids from the neighborhood that are shooting pucks, and I go, tell me more, because that's what I want to hear. Because by the time that camp rolls around in August, this kid's probably going to be lights out because he prepared. Where somebody else that we were like, oh, last year he won all this and he was #1 goalie here, there, he might be behind the curve. And you go, brother, you had one shot. I can't pick a goalie for a team based off your past body of work all the time. If you don't show up to a tryout, I'm sorry. So when you talk about last year with Omaha, yeah, we had drafted 2 goalies. We had at the time, and I still think the kid is the best goalie in the league, even though he's not there anymore. We had a great stable. Well, we also, I did my job. We did our job between Kirky and I. We had some great goalies come to camp, one of which stole a spot. And you don't predict it, but he was lights out. Mitch got to work with them, last summer at the development camp. Goalie that we had drafted last year that didn't make the team. He went to Bismarck, and this year he was drafted in the first round of Fargo. So both those goalies, even though we identified them last year, are still going to be in this league. But it's a matter of showing up prepared. So the next thing that, I talk about, did I miss the little slide? Yeah, nope, yeah. Sorry. Always got to prepare. So this is a big thing for me. If you permit it, you promote it. I like to ask kids, how many Coca-Colas? I love Coca-Cola, but I'm also not a 19-year-old athlete that's in shape. But how many Coca-Colas have you had to drink? And they're like, oh, I only had one this week. Okay. Sometimes one turns to two. And when I see a kid that's got 9 hours of screen time, it tells me he's probably not working out. He's not surrounding himself in the environment. He's not thinking big rocks. And he might have permitted himself to eat a pizza 2 days in a row. Well, then he's promoting that lifestyle. Then that 2 pizzas turns into 3, and it turns into 4. And then the kid's, not working out well. Or he skips a workout one day and goes, I'll get it tomorrow. Well, if you permit it, you promote it. And so what you're telling me is you're promoting bad habits. Outside of being a good citizen, for me, the biggest thing is your habits. What you do, because I am not there 24/7 to babysit you, and I have to have trust and faith in you when I go, hey, my job is to help you get better, and when I'm not here, I need to know that you're doing things that I ask you to do. Not, coach isn't here, it's goof off time for the next 7 days till he's back. We can't have that. Like, you've got to be on point. So, and then the other thing is never know until you ask. I've had a lot of goalies. This is a big one for a lot of you guys in the call that have walked up to me at a showcase. I'm pretty available. I sit there in the crowd. I don't hide. I don't want to go upstairs in a loft and watch. Last year in Omaha, I was right on the glass. I set up a table. Goalies came up and said, here, grab a chair, sit down, talk to me. For me, I want to talk. I don't want to be left alone. But I had kids asking, hey, what do I do here? What should I do? I love talking to everybody. I want everybody to be better. But I've also had kids that go, hey, I'd love to get an opportunity to come try out at this team. How do I get invited? Well, here's your invite. I appreciate the fact you asked, because I've got to also get goalies to come to camp, and you want to be there. I don't want to be the guy that, hey, I know we've got an email list of 60 goalies. Let's email them all and see what gets there. No, that's not how I handle things. And part of when I take jobs is I go, hey, look, I don't want to go status quo. You can always fill a camp, but I want to get after the kids that I've seen, that I know, that I have a rapport, that I like, or the ones that are just willing to man up, come up and ask a question. Because to me, it says a lot about you. I can make you a better goalie. Any guy on this call can make you a better goalie. I can't make people better people, or I can try at least, but when they show a little courage and step up and get outside their comfort level and want to ask questions, never hesitate to ask questions. This is a big one for me. If you want a dog, you got to clean its poop. I've got a big lab. He likes to poop everywhere. And I look at my son going, get the broom. The moral of this story for you goalies is you can't sit there, not work out, and then blame somebody else. You've got to take onus and ownership of your actions. You can't go to a rink, get scored on, and start blaming the defense. At the end of the day, yes, 5 guys failed before you saw a shot. I get it. But it means on the 6th thing, you're the 6th guy. You didn't do your job. You've got to take ownership. That is tough, especially at the junior level, there's so much on the stakes. Guys will be like, well, what about this? And I go, listen, I don't deal with yeah buts or what ifs. At the end of the day, if we get scored on, what happened? We go back to our P6, and how can we try and prevent it for the next time? If it happens, it happens. Listen, everyone's going to let goals in. There's no such thing as a guy that got 50 shutouts. It's just not in one season. It doesn't happen. Otherwise, Patrick Waugh, Broder, nobody would ever score. I mean, I guess the closest you could say was Dryden. You go back to the 70s with what was in front of him. Little shout out to the Habs. But you have to take ownership of what you are doing. So let's talk juniors in the U.S. Why do colleges scout junior hockey leagues? It's a question people always ask me. When you try and explain to anybody in the U.S. that's not involved in hockey, like your neighbor that you coach juniors, they think you're talking about 8-year-olds. Junior hockey obviously allows the kids to play hockey. The biggest thing is it prepares them for the college life away from family. You're not waking up at 7 a.m. with mom serving you pancakes, driving your cute car to school, hanging out with your friends for 8 hours, getting off school, hitting your phone, and having practice once a day. You're practicing 5 days a week. You're on the road. You've got study halls, study habits. Everything's micromanaged. So why do colleges want to scout that? Well, the reality is in the U.S., there's about 23,000 players, if not more, per birth year. So that's a 5-year window this year when you're looking at 2000s all the way down to 04s. Because you got to remember, 04s were drafted, some were tendered in the USHL. You'll probably see 20 04s playing this year. So out of that 5-year pool, that's 115,000 American kids. 115,000 kids. Like we mentioned earlier, I don't believe that there's 40 teams. So that 40 teams is less than 900 roster spots. So that 115,000 American kids get whittled down to 900. Of that 900, you got to factor in Canadians and Euros. You know, in the USHL, the last 2 years, I got to double check for this year, you were allowed to have 4 imports plus 2 Canadians. They were like swings. So you could have 6 Canadians. You could have 4 Swedes, 2 Canadians. So out of your 23-man spot, 6 of them were not Americans. So for those of you guys on the call that are in the U.S., that 900 starts to drop down. It gets below 740 real quick. So you got to think 115,000 eligible players narrows down to 740. So why aren't colleges showing up at, you know, my local Illinois high school hockey game and watching it? Well, because there's no point. You know, they can go to a USHL game or a North American League game and see the entire system refined to the top 1-2%. You know, or whatever the math shakes out to be. You know, but the point is that's the top 1-2%. Now you factor in, yes, there's the BCHL, the AJ, the Manitoba League. Absolutely, we get it. But right now we're addressing the Americans in the U.S. So the odds of making it gets pretty narrow. So it gets back down to, you know, your big rocks and what are you doing to be in that 740 as opposed to just out of that 115,000. So where do junior teams get kids, or where do they scout? Who's doing it? Where do they see you? The reality is the difference between the USHL and North American League is pretty drastic in that regards. But I will say this, obviously having coached in both leagues, currently coaching in both leagues, there is a lot of reciprocity and symbiotic relationship between the two leagues. You know, for instance, this year when you come to a Lincoln main camp, you'll look around and see, you know, 5 to 10 Null teams there hanging out, and the coaching staffs all talk to each other. It's like, hey, if I'm not going to take, you know, I'm going to throw a pass on Jason. I'm not going to take him for our net. You guys should take him. That's where a lot of the scouting gets done. But where are we looking? Mostly, you're looking at AAA hockey. You know, again, that you have showcases that brings all the boys to the yard. Your high schools, your Minnesotas, your Wisconsins, Michigans, all the New England prep schools, showcases. I am a big proponent that I do believe kids that are playing Tier 2 hockey, you know, non-AAA, so there are some gems out there. You know, not everybody can afford the Tier 1 price tag. I understand that. I coached Tier 2 for 20 years, so I know that there's kids out there that can do it. I love finding those guys. And so I'm notorious for going to some showcases. I believe every showcase has merit. I don't like the fact that some people go, oh, they're just money makers. Well, yeah, showcase makes money. Guess what? How do you think they pay for all of us to get there? You know, but there's a lot of kids that have attended showcases that I've walked up to, found, next thing you know, they're in leagues, and they go, you know, if for instance, the goalie we were talking about that was drafted by Lincoln, that Mitch worked with, had I not seen him at the America Showcase on Team Arizona, never would have heard of him. But I was there scouting, wrote a big report on him, followed up with him. Now the kid's Division I committed, and he's playing, you know, in the USHL, and you're going, it all cycles back because he took a chance on a showcase. That wasn't one of the big ones that you'd ever heard of. But there are guys out there. You know, I'm a big guy that says, you know, if Matt's got a team and goes, Jay, I really need a goalie. Great. Here's a list of 20 goalies that I've identified that I really like. I can't take 20 goalies. I can only take 4 between the two teams. You know, it means there's 16 other high-profile goalies out there that I like to share with all the, you know, connections. You know, I believe, you know, you get seen if you want it. The other thing is open tryouts. People go, hey, coach, I got invited to Kansas City's open camp. Is it worth it, or is it just a moneymaker? You know, to me, if you feel that any junior camp is just a moneymaker, do us all a favor and don't go. You just helped the tryout process. You just eliminated yourself, and you just saved me time that I can focus on other kids. If you think, hey, you know, they've got a 30-man protected list, the odds of me making the team are 0. We've already talked about one scenario where that was proven wrong. Kids make teams at tryouts all the time. And a lot of times with open tryouts, the reason we have those is because I or my staff or any staff that I'm on, we can't see every goalie or every player in the country. You show up to an open camp, you can make a name for yourself and you go, okay, timeout. We got a ball player here. So open camps are good. So when you do go to camps, talk about the do's and the don'ts. And again, as far as goalies, battle. It's a tryout. Yeah, be friendly with everybody, hoot and holler. That's all great. But at the end of the day, do you want to spot on the team or do you not? I know of one goalie that showed up. Mitch has worked with them as well, and the kid's very too cool for school. And you're going like, buddy, it ain't going to work that way. Like, I mean, I need you to be cutthroat. I need you to sit there and somebody runs your D. I want you to be the guy going in there. You got all the pads on. Like, you need to battle. You need to put it all on the line. Don't be reserved. We had a very high-profile goalie last year show up to Omaha's main camp, and everyone's like, oh, Shay, you got to watch him. Like, he's going to be the guy that steals the spot. I saw no life out of him, no jam, nothing. When we talked to him, he felt, oh, well, I kind of figured it's my spot. And it's like, who are you? Like, we've already got 3 goalies that we've drafted, committed to. I got another kid that shows up out of the woodwork stealing spot, and this guy's thinking it's his gig. I go, well, it was nice meeting you. Shook his hand, and his dad was like, what? That's it, man. Fly back to where you're from. No battle. You got to get in there and battle. The other thing is play to your strengths. Sometimes kids, especially, well, I'll say it this year. For this year's tryout, every goalie better be the best stick handling goalie I've ever seen in my life, because you haven't had ice, so you've got a driveway, you've got a tennis court, and you've got a lot of time because you're not in school. Play to your strengths. If you've got amazing puck handling and passing skills, do it nonstop. Do it. I love goalies that can play the puck. The more you play it, the happier of a guy I am. Okay? If you can do it, do it. You see kids that have got great glove hands, show me that thing. You got kids that know how to just come out, play the angles, and can be aggressive. Play your game. We can build structure around the goalie. I'm a big proponent of that. Not every goalie's the same. And just because a goalie, is a great goalie doesn't mean he's going to fit on the right team. You see that all the time in the NHL. You get teams go, oh, we got this all-star goalie coming. Well, it didn't pan out well. Well, it's because you tried to shove a Corvette engine in a Dodge Ram truck. Play to your strengths. Show the coach why you should be on that team. Make it to where the coach starts to question himself. I've been in the room where we've all sat there and go, did we choose right? Because this kid's looking a lot better than everything that we had. All of our intel pointed at goalie A, but goalie B is making us rethink the decision. And I love that because it makes us better as coaches. And more importantly, you go, this kid brought it. This kid showed up and said, it's mine. Okay? The other thing is dress the part when you show up to a tryout or an open camp. I realize hockey is notorious for the long hair. That's cool. It's cute. But when I see kids showing up, like I'll use my buddy Gempler. He's got the CCM showcase out in Denver. I think it's a fantastic event. It's amazing. I find more kids there than I know what to do with. But I'm the guy that's kind of sitting off in the weeds because you don't know who I am. I don't wear any branded apparel the first day, and I'm just watching check-in. I want to see what kid shows up, dressed the part, shakes a hand like a man, versus the one that's got mom introducing everybody. I can hear. So I start making my decisions right there because at the end of the day, are you trying to become a citizen in our locker room? Are you trying to become a member of my family? Because you're representing us. And I want kids that, and again, I'm not saying that's the law. This is my philosophy. I'm also the kid that's grown up on military bases all around the globe. Like, I want the guy with the hand out, not the one with the hat backwards, skateboard shorts, and the cool hair that, mom pays to get highlights in. That's, to me, is not what we need. We want the kids that are willing to just scrap and go. Okay? So how do you get noticed? Again, from the door of the rink to the ice. I realize hockey equipment's heavy, but when you see some kids pulling in with wheeled bags, you start going, all right, not that there's anything wrong with the wheeled bag, but meet coaches, shake hands. When I go to the showcases, they always assign me to a team. I walk around the room every day, first minute, shake every kid's hand. Try and look them in the eye. It's things I believe in. The kid that stands up, shakes my hand, kind of aggressive and smiles, I go, that's my citizen. That's the kid that I'm going to learn his name by the end of this game and know throughout the weekend. Whereas the other kid might be buddy, chief, pal, big guy. Walk in with the purpose. Don't, roll your shoulders back. Know that you're going to own it. You're trying to take a spot. There's no free rides in junior hockey. There's not. I can tell you this, there was an NHL team that reached out to me last year and said, hey, we got this goalie we drafted from Europe. We need you to take him. Well, I'm not going to take him. Guess what? The kid, somebody else took him. Then he got traded. Then he got traded down. Then he got traded around. It's like, no, thanks. They get it wrong too. They're not perfect, clearly. There were 16 goalies, I think, drafted in front of Henrik Lundqvist. That's 15, 16 scouts probably should lose their job. But walk in like you own it because you're trying to go for a spot. The other thing is people want to know, like, hey, can I send you a YouTube clip? I love it. I should have put it in there. I wrote an article for In Goal years back, and it's funny because it resurfaces every year at this time. And I had not one but two USHL head coaches reach out to me this week saying, I wish every kid read your article on this. And the point being is, I get this video of a goalie who's a great goalie, and it was a state playoff game. And the video camera is being used from like the second, mezzanine. So the goalie looks like he's about a pin, or on my 50-inch plasma in my office, the kid's 2 inches tall. This is a 6'5" goalie that's now 2 inches tall. I'm old. I got bad eyes. So I'm trying to judge a kid, and it reminds me of that scene in My Cousin Vinny. I'm trying to look through all the bushes and all the debris to find the kill. Like I'm looking through, he makes a save and it's a pile up. So there's 10 kids in front of the goalie and I'm going, what am I doing? And I can hear the mom doing the cheerleading. Like, be careful with video. The other thing is, we know you're not perfect. Don't send me a video that's a highlight reel where you just send me 20 great glove windmill saves and go, coach, should I make it? I go, that doesn't tell me about you. The best thing nowadays, and you didn't have it a decade ago, you sure as hell didn't have it when Matt was growing up. You didn't have it, I'm not sure that cameras existed when Mitch grew up, but go get a GoPro. Get a GoPro, stick it on the glass, make it to where you were almost the entire frame. I'm there to watch you. When I go to showcases and playing at the CCM, I want to stand on the glass. I stand right where the Zamboni comes out. I want to be 6 feet from you. I want to read your ankles. I want to know what your head's doing. Are you just staring in the corner? Are you surveying? I want to know. That's what I want to see on tape. The other thing, emails. They're great for introductions and information. Don't sit there and go, dear coach, I'm interested in playing for your program. Well, I don't know that I'm dear coach. I had a kid send me an email, and he had every single email in the USHL in the header. So all the teams and all the staff got this, and it's like, no thanks. And so the problem is I see that, I go, I don't think you want to play for me. So I write it off. Well, imagine if there's 15 of me, one in every program. Well, the kid's not being taken serious. Make it personal. If you're going to send an email like Coach Power, I want to come play for Team X. When are your tryout dates? Here's a YouTube clip of some stuff. Here's my coach's contact info, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm really interested. Well, then I read all that and I go, that's great. Now, keep it like a mini skirt where it's short and sweet, makes me want more. Don't send me an entire, doctorate on who you are. I'm not going to read all that. It needs to just be sweet, simple, and let me start getting back to you on it. So who should be selling you? Advisors. Advisors are good. There's a lot of, let me back up. There are a lot of advisors. There are some great advisors out there. At the end of the day, should it be your parent? No. Don't let your parents be the one that's trying to sell you, because I see too many kids and mom and dad want to talk for the player. The mom and dad are not coming to play for a team. You are. The answer is you. You need to be the one that's saying, hey, I want to be there. What do I need to do? You're the one that puts the work in. You are the one that says, I need to create a better environment, not mom and dad. Okay. You've got to make the decision if this is what you want to do and if you're willing to make the sacrifices. Mom and dads will say, yeah, absolutely, he's willing to. But the question is, are you? And are you mentally tough and mature for the job? Because if you are, that's what you need to be selling, not the advisors and not just your parents. All of it factors in, but at the end of the day, it's you. Lastly, I put this little graph together. So people always kind of try and figure out, like, oh, this, little Timmy's playing AAA. He's going to go play juniors next year for sure. And you go, are you really sure? Like we talked about earlier, there's 140, 150 AAA teams. But if you had 16 teams or 8 teams, that's 16 goalies. I'm not inviting 16 goalies to a main camp from 8 teams. So in theory, if you pretend like these 16 on the bottom are the starting goalie on 16 different AAA teams, they all show up. It whittles down to 8 to 4 to 2 to 1. This kid could have been a starter at AAA, moves up to the next level. He made it into North American League. Great. He was a starter. Boom, moves up. Next thing you know, he's in the USHL, but he might be the backup. There's two kids. All of a sudden, boop, only one of them goes on and it moves forward. So you really need to evaluate yourself on your programs and figure out if you're the guy. Turn off the screen sharing real quick and we'll get back to the Q and the A. Boop, 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 boop. So hopefully that helped some. I know it was kind of out of left field, Mitch, but and then one of the questions he was asking was, what is the difference between the USHL and the North American League in terms of goalies? And the answer is, let's talk about the two leagues independently. The USHL is a younger league. The North American League is an older league. In the NA, you get a lot of kids that finished out high school, finished out AAA, and they enter at 1920s, or in this case, 01s and 2000s. The USHL drafts early, and it limits the age of the older kids. So you can only have, this year, 4 2000s. So let's say last year a team had 8 2000s. They've got it cut for them. If they didn't already go up to school, they trickle back into the NA. So from a goalie standpoint, the difference in play, the NA, you're seeing a lot of older guys again. On the USHL side, it's like high-speed chaos because you got kids that are basically drunk on Red Bull at youth, just flying up and down the wings, and anything can happen. Okay, in the USHL, you don't tend to see a lot of perimeter play. It's in tight, jam, and it goes to the other, and it's fast. Okay, the USHL is a faster level of play than the North American League. It's not that that's good, bad, or worse. It's two different structures. Okay, and so when you start looking at it from a goalie standpoint, the USHL is real finicky on it. Drafts early. We have 2 drafts, phase 1, phase 2. So this year, phase 1 was 04s. Phase 2 is everybody else. So when you go look at phase 2, where are they drafting? They're all drafting out of the North American League. Why? Because the kid got his structure. He got acclimated to junior hockey. He adapted to that lifestyle. He matured. He now understands his role. So it's in this symbiotic relationship to where the USHL takes a kid out of the North American League and he has success. You go look at a lot of the goalies last year in the USHL. Previously, they were in the North American. So the NA, with the heavier structure, in terms of play on ice and shot quality, primes the goalie up better. So when he steps into the USHL and it's crazy, he can read those plays. It's not to say kids can't start in the USHL and say they're absolutely they can. But the biggest thing for people to understand is at the end of the day, both roads lead to the same place. They're both pushing you into college hockey. They both take you there. And when you go look at any Division I program, the whole system resets. You have your juniors and seniors. They're going to be the big, heavier bodies. And your freshmen, sophomores that are still now hyper because they finally got there. And so the whole thing just matures with itself and grows. So from a goalie standpoint, I don't think there's anything one better than the other. When you go look at the NHL draft, you go, okay, there are goalies getting drafted out of the North American. I think in I'm going to test my numbers here. I think 2015, there were 6 goalies out of the North American League drafted, and you're going, it outdrafted every other league in North America, and you go, what? And part of it was at that time, the USHL had so many European goalies that all the Americans got funneled down into the NA and just dominated it to where all the NHL scouts are going, there's our better goalies. Okay, so both leagues are great. If you're a kid that's going, if you're saying, oh, I only want to play in this, not in that, you're probably not going to play in either. If you're in either league, take it. Find your big rock, set your habits, and dominate that level of play. Just get it done. If you're in the NA and you're not a 2000 in this case, if you're in 01 and 02 and 03, and, there's going to be some 03s playing, and they get in there and you get your feet wet and you start to perform and you can show that you can do it, you're probably going to make a lateral move and go into the USHL next year. Because guys in the USHL need somebody that's going to win games. End of discussion. You've got to come in and you've got to sit there and go, I don't have to worry. He's got it. I got to focus on all the young guys up front. Flat out. I see Matt smiling through the camera here, so I think I said something that he liked.
No, to be honest, I really love the topic of discussion. There's so many good points that you kind of brought And hopefully the guys that are on the call that work with us hear some things that sound similar to what we've been saying. Obviously the older guys that are on the call, I'm thinking, Jeremy Siegel, Harris got a good question. Those guys I've had conversations with that are on that cusp of making that jump from the AAA to the prep school juniors. And we've had discussions like this. So hopefully things that you say resonate a little bit more, hearing it from a different voice. Overall, I really appreciate you jumping on. And
well, if you don't mind, let's answer some of the questions that are in the chat.
Let's get into that. So our first question from Evan is, how old do you have to be to play in juniors?
So again, we talked about this year, it's 2000s, 01s, 02s. You can be an 03 and an 04 as well. The majority you're going to see is 2000s to 02s. You will see 03s. Well, in the USHL, you'll see a lot of 03s. North American League, you'll see a few. In North American League, you're going to see a lot more 2000s and 01s.
And I think in Canadian juniors, isn't there an 04 that got exceptional status? I think it's going to be playing in the OHL, I believe. But that's obviously very rare that you're going to have an 04 playing at that level.
No, it's an 04 or 05 this year, Mitch.
The 04.
Because you're going to have 04s in the USHL this year.
Yeah, they wouldn't have for exceptional status for an 04.
Yeah, I think it's 05s.
Okay.
Who knows?
Right, so Harris has a question. What is your advice for a goalie that's been invited to a USHL or an NA main camp to get their name out there before getting on the ice? Great
question. So, first off, go to both, because you're going to see a lot of the same faces. I've got a marketing background. So the rule of marketing is, 7. The more times I see something, the more opt I am to buy it. When I only see a goalie once, I go, oh, well, what was that? And I kind of start looking away. If I show up at the next showcase and see the same kid, I go, it's him again. And then I start to build a rapport, and I show up at the camp and I go, it's him. That's how you start to get seen, especially in juniors. At both USHL, you're going to have, prior to this year with all the blackout extension, you had a ton of NCAA schools show up, and they also show up to NA camps. Again, you got to remember, it's all connected. It's all this big fraternity, a lot of talking. So be at both, because all you're doing is exposing yourself. As far as what can you do to get your name out there before getting on the ice, I'm assuming that's getting on the ice at those camps. If you can afford to do so, in my opinion, there are things like that CCM showcase. It's great because all, scouts are all there. I know of one young man that's on this call whom I found it or saw the first time it said CCM showcase. And I know exactly what, USHL camps he's going to this year. So go to showcase. Again, it's exposure. As far as working out, if you got a goalie coach, that's great, but I don't think that really applies this year because hardly anybody's on the ice, unless you're talking about next month. But also find those guys that are coaching in those leagues. Many of us own or operate our own camps or go and assist our friends that have camps, and so forth, because summer's a downtime, right? So again, it's more exposure. There's a lot of times kids go to camps and you get to work with them one-on-one and you go, I kind of like this guy, and then hey, you need to come over to this main camp and boom, 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 boom. But don't be afraid of showcases. I'm a big believer in the ones. And then the other thing is this year, call a spade, but with the pandemic, many of the showcases aren't operating. So the ones that have moved back and will be operating, you're really looking at like prime real estate now. In the past, I'd go to 4 or 5 in the summer. I only have 1 on my books this year. And so that 1's going to get a lot more attention than 5, if that makes sense. I don't want it to come off like I'm pushing people to a program that, a friend of mine owns. But he's only a friend because I've been going to the thing for 10 years.
Cool. Jackson has a question. How do affiliates work with the NA and the USHL?
So in the USHL, you basically have 2 rosters. You've got your active list, and then you have what's called an affiliate. So when we mentioned the USHL had 2 drafts, 2 phases, phase 1, phase 2. So in phase 1, everybody got 10 picks. Those 10 immediately go to your affiliate list. That affiliate list can sit there and also include, in this case, 03s and a couple of 02s. So the only way you can get on the affiliate list is if you have been drafted or I believe you have to have been drafted. The only way you can get on the active list is you have to have been drafted, traded, or attended the main camp and then added. There's a few other little caveats and loopholes to it. But the way that it works is, so let's say in this case, Jackson, let's say he was drafted by, the St. Louis Eagles. Okay, we'll use a defunct team. and he was playing AAA where he does. What happens is the St. Louis Eagles, if he's on our affiliate list or their affiliate list, can bring him up. Now he can play, anybody on the affiliate list can play up to 10 games. At the 10-game mark, the team either drops you or they have to keep you. And if they keep you, it means they move you to the active list and they got to get rid of somebody else. So what happens is you see a lot of times, like AAA teams, oh, good luck to Jackson this weekend. St. Louis pulled him up, for 2 games as an affiliate player. Social media, you see that a lot. 5 years ago, you never heard of it. Now everybody does it because the AAA club wants to look at us. We're putting more kids into the USHL. Move your kid here from out of town, which is kind of the part of the course of AAA. So, and then in the North American League, I don't believe we even have affiliate rules. And if they do exist, I'm speaking out of turn, I don't see them. At the end of the day in the NA, if I like Matt, I see Matt one weekend, I can sit there and go to his team. I can dress Matt the following weekend, provided I don't, pee in somebody's Cheerios. You still got to sit there and respect the programs. But the adds and drops in the North American League are, there's a limit, but you can grab from anywhere. The USHL, you are restricted to what you drafted and what came out of main camp. You don't just get to sit there and see a kid go, oh, let's pull him up for the weekend. Or this advisor called, I want to pull the kid up. Now, between the USHL and North American League, there's an agreement for player movement that's outside of that, but that's a whole different discussion. And it's mostly used for emergency situations, or at the end of the day, inside of USA Hockey, this ladder of development, it's kids moving up. So you never want to deny a kid the opportunity to go high,
Okay. Max has a question. As a scout, what really impresses you with what a goalie does?
This is the easiest question for me. And I say these at showcases all the time. So the biggest things I always do as a scout, because, scouted for 15 years as well, I want to stand right behind the goalie. I watch your ankles. Any goalie coach can tell you, like a kid that's ready, his feet are kind of upright. The kid, as soon as he starts getting set, your ankles kind of bite in, and that's when I know you're going to get burned. Second biggest thing for me is I'm not a big RVH guy. I remember teaching it, ironically with Tretiak back in 2001. And it was great for wraparounds, tight jams. I respect it. Still use it. It's perfect for that. It's been fermented and bastardized so bad to where, at one district festival, I'm sitting there, I've got 7 Division I coaches, and we're watching this kid staying down in an RVH. The puck moves to the wall off the dot lane. Mitch knows I hate that. He's still down. The puck moves and cycles. Guys are playing. It's now rapid, and the kid hasn't moved. He's still leaning down. I'm 5'9", this kid's 5'9", so in an RVH, he's 2 foot, and it's just clear sails over him, and you go, I don't care what else you do that week, and that one bad habit kills you, okay? So for me, it's ankles. 2, it's, how you handle post play. 3, do you do head checks? So if I'm on the post, am I surveying, am I scanning, am I trying to find guys? Because you get some kids that just stare like a horse with blinders. That scares me because that's a habit. I need to know if you're able to scan and see and you're not just reacting. And then 4, I want to see goalies that play the pucks. If you play the puck, you're going to win me over. If anything outside of that, I do not. So too often, and I see it a lot with younger goalie coaches. Oh, I don't like how he holds his glove, and I wish you would. They want to get over technical. I'm like, buddy, you don't need to sell me. I could care less. You really don't. Like, I'm glad that's how you operate and think. I don't care. I want a kid that's willing to stab the puck in its own throat and make sure nothing happens. Like, I don't care how you make the save. The 4 of us on this call are old enough to remember, 93 before the Nordiques moved, right? Stefan Fise makes that great save where he's on his belly, and he lifts his legs up and he takes the puck to the backside of his skate to make a save in the playoffs. And you go, there's no drill. You're not going to teach that, but you're willing to do whatever. That's what I want to see. I need a kid that's willing to just lay it all on the line. And then finally, the 5th thing that I look for is your puck placement. Are you a kid that's just kicking rebounds back out in front, or are you cognitive enough to know to put the puck in the corner? That's the 5 things that I look for personally.
I mean, that's great stuff. And obviously, Laurent, I'll let you take the floor for a second. But Matt, these are things you and I talk about all the time. We talk about the rebound control. We talk about puck play. We talk about not being down in RVH. We talk about all this stuff. And it's great to hear that, the message that we're conveying to our students is also out there at such a high level. So Laurent, obviously, you and I have been talking for quite a while. These are the same messages you're saying too, right?
it's the same thing we talk about. We're basically, all saying the same thing over and over. And for sure, like the RVH up, I think it was 2 years back was a really big topic, right? So it came out and it was really big. But then, you kind of start realizing that the bad habits that it can create. And then, I was kind of a big fan of the RVH at first. And then, the more and more I was looking into it, really looking deeply into what it includes, well, you kind of start realizing what, again, the bad habits that it brings, right? So it's all stuff like that, right? But we all have the same sort of speech here. And it's I mean, Jason, it was great. I mean, I took notes because I actually learned a few things about the states here, but no, I mean, it was a great, definitely a great speech here.
I think it's a good point to kind of bring it back to sometimes it's not necessarily the minor details that we all want to try and talk about and overcomplicate this topic with, some of these teachings. I think it comes back to a couple of the points that you brought up right away. I mean, the culture. If I was looking for a goaltender, I think the culture that I see is important. When I was fortunate enough to play on a national championship team in 2009 at Newman, and the one thing that we had there was under the culture discussion was a foxhole mentality, right? So some of you guys might know what a foxhole is. For those that don't, in a war, there used to be this hole that people would crawl into and hide, and then you would have to go into a foxhole and go get the people out of there, right? Because you guys are fighting against each other. And sometimes you get caught in, and you don't want anybody in that foxhole with you if you don't 100% trust him. If you don't think that they're going to be doing everything in their power to help you accomplish what that goal is, whatever that may be. So for me, watching someone play and battle, you can talk about this a couple of goalies that you watch that maybe are robotic. For me, those goalies don't have that same type of fire or passion that I want on my team. They might be able to stop the puck. They might look pretty doing it, but someone that I know is going to run through a wall or, back up a teammate or have that foxhole mentality, those are the players that I think are going to have the highest trajectory to reach the highest levels of hockey. And it comes down to a lot of different pieces. We can talk all day long about the important details that coaches look for goalies with, skill set wise. But I think the X factors that Jason brought up are so much more important for our goalies on this call to really think about and help develop inside of your own game. If you can grow those type of characteristics in yourself, it propels you to these levels that we're talking about. I'm not a big goalie. I was very technically sound, but I wasn't overly technical when I played. I was quick, I was aggressive, I was fiery. I grew up watching Hextall and Mike Richter, so I was kind of all over the place. Plus, one of the favorite goalies to watch, and I hated watching him, but I liked watching him, was Hasek, because no matter what that guy did, you can't teach what he did, but man, he was one of the best players ever to put the pads on and stop pucks. And those are the things that, again, comes back into doing your strengths, playing to your strengths, and understanding who you are and what you can do to play to the best of your ability. But I really love the intro to the discussion. The environment is so very important. Just like what we eat as a diet, what we ingest, either visually or in our ears, or what we read, or what we're surrounded with, influence us so much. The culture, we touched on that P6, piss poor planning. I love it. Mine was failing to plan is planning to fail. You always need, it's something along those lines. I kind of like yours better. It's a little bit more catchy.
It's to the point.
One that I liked was, if you permit it, you
Promote it.
You promote it. Mine, when I was coaching, was always you accept what you tolerate and you have to change you accept what you tolerate, and then you have to learn how to change what you can't tolerate and only tolerate what you can't change. So it's coming down to those things where if you're in an environment and teammate A is doing something poor, and you're going to sit there and watch teammate do it and not step up and tell them how to do it better or hold them accountable, you're just as bad as teammate B, right? And again, those things are all about the culture and, again, putting yourself in a position to be successful. But overall, I really enjoyed the conversation. Again, to anybody else that wants to chime in that has questions for Jason before we let him go, jump into the chat. But from his mouth to our ears, it's 100% true. This is one of the most competitive positions in all of sports. And we have a great resource on the line today that is dealing with the top two leagues in the United States for 20 or 21 and under. So obviously anybody that has questions jump up. This is a perfect time to kind of use this resource. And let me reiterate it again to Jason. We just are very grateful to have you.
Well, thank you. You know, and while we're waiting on a question, I'll tell this. So I'm also the head coach of the Romanian national team, right? So it's not goalies. I've got the whole spectrum. So in 2016, they asked me to be an assistant on their 18 team. So go over, communication's just bad. Long story short, we're getting there. We're in the tournament. And the way the IIHF works, you know, outside of the big boys, you got, you know, obviously what we see on TV, US, Canada, Sweden, Finland, Russia, okay? Everybody else, it's bracketed. Okay? 6 teams. You win, you relegate up. You know, you lose, you relegate down. But inside your bracket, there's golds, silvers, bronze. So it's points. And so we're sitting there, you know, I'm scouting the other teams, you know, because you're allowed to they have rules. So you can watch practice. I'm doing all my little data on the goalies. I come in, I go, here's the plan. We want to do this. We want to shoot here. You know, I do visual mapping. So the kids could see it. So we blow out Croatia, something like 9-0. And everyone's like, oh my God. So we win the next game. You know, so the 5th game we get in, we're playing Great Britain. And at the time, the Kirk kid who's on Peterborough in the OHL now, this is when he was like 16, stud. And so we're playing Great Britain, and we realized we could lose the game and we'd still medal. We're losing the game. We're going to third period. We're losing like 3-1. I'm losing my shit. I don't like losing. He's like, Jason, what's a care? You know, he's like, and I mean, I flipped. So I start chewing ass because I didn't want to win a bronze. If we won the game, we took home silver. Okay. Wasn't going to get the gold. We knew Poland was taking gold, but you know, the American in me, I wanted the next best step. So we ended up winning the game like 5-3. Like we mount this comeback because I got the guys rallied up and so forth. But we created this culture. So I go back every year, and it's like now, last year I was with the 20s in Estonia, and half the team I had on 8 teams like 3 years ago. And the other half has no idea who I am. And they're just like, you know, they're either too old, they're outside my bracket, or they're new that I just missed the boat. So this year I was named head coach for the 18s. Tournament didn't happen. I was literally a day away from, you know, getting on a plane, you know. But nonetheless, I was excited because it was all new kids, none of which I'd ever met, you know. But the emails and the exchanges and the Instagram, like they haven't figured out Facebook and Twitter. So they're on Instagram, you know, and they're like, Coach, so excited. And then the goalie starts sending me videos of them doing drills that I left over there 4 years ago that said, this is how we're going to define our culture. They still do it. It's like gospel. And they go, Coach, I'm so great. And I'm going like, this is awesome. Because now I don't have to do squat when I get over there with, you know, like we're already balls in motion, you know. So what the culture for me is, it's a very big thing, you know. And when you talk culture, yeah, culturally they're as different as St. Louis is to Montreal. I mean, it's, you know, 2 different ends of the spectrum, but on the ice, we established what we wanted. And so then when you get into last year at the 20s, you know, I fly over and I made signs in the locker rooms. You know, we see them here in the U.S. That was foreign to them. They didn't understand. They're like, nobody's ever done this. And I go, no, you need to buy in. You need to believe. You know, like, you know, we're in this together. You know, I'm 19 hours away from home. I'm not here for vacation. You know, like, this isn't where I want a vacation. You know, like, so it's just
energy.
Absolutely. You know, and then guys see that and they feed off of each other, and that's the build that you want, you know. And so in terms of the people on the call, like, you need to be that goalie that's willing to sit there and go, I want to be part of that culture, and I want to bring that. I don't want to be a barnacle on the ass of progress. I don't want to be a succubus. I don't want to be the woe is me. I want to be the guy that's like, hey, you know, even if I am not in the net, you've got to bring it and rally everybody together. I'm looking at more questions here.
Yeah, so we have a question from Thomas. How does one go about receiving an invite to a camp or a tryout?
You know, honestly, it's pretty simple. A lot of times it's based on what you know, it's, the first step of it is your body of work. Where did you play? You know, because I'm not going to invite 50 goalies. So it really starts to whittle itself down there ahead of time. Even the open camps that are there, it still starts to calculate, you know, if 60 goalies want to come in an open camp, we still have to cut it down to 10. So there's a lot of pre-work that's done, you know. And then what happens is when you really start thinking about it, you go, okay, if I'm inviting 15 goalies to a USHL camp, arguably, you know, 1 through 5 might make the USHL, whether they're with me or with somebody else. 6 through 15 could plausibly make the North American League. And so in my situation, there are people that I'm inviting to both. And it's not to say you don't have a shot making this, and I'm filling the camp. It's I want you here because if you can steal the show there, it's all yours. If you come just a hair short, then I know you can do this. That makes sense. There's not a lot of us out there that dual operate. There's a few. I think there's 4 of us that I can name in the 2 leagues. But there's a lot of that goes on. And then again, like I've already said 5 times, I share my, hell yeah, go take a look at this kid. At the end of the day, I'd rather see a kid in the league than me cutting him and hiding him. No, get after it. You go back a decade ago when I was coaching in Springfield, I was proud that I had cut 6 kids. It sounds weird when I say it. 6 kids I cut at main camp all went on and played Division I. And that's not to say I did wrong because both kids that we had went to Division I, but it was a highlight to go and we got the right kids at the tryout. And then even when I was cutting kids, I go, I believe in you. I think you can play in this league. I'm going to call teams in another division that I never have to fucking see. And I hope you end up there. And they did. And you're like, great. One of them still texts me to this day. Went on and played Denver. When I'm out in Denver, we go and have tacos. But he's like, dude, I'm still to this day grateful. Like, you cut me and called another team. And I go, that's what it's all about, man. Just because I don't have a home for you doesn't mean that you're not good. Somebody needs you. Cycle back to the culture thing. I'm a big believer of there are goalie coaches that I know and love and trust that I get on the phone with, what do you got? And I dip into the same jars all the time. There's one kid that's on this call that, is case in point. I know what club I found him at. I've drafted another kid out of his same club. I've had other goalies from the same club. And the reason is his goalie coach that he was at is a friend that I trust, that I learn from. And I go, you keep making them, I'll keep taking them. You make my job easier because I trust your culture and your development to where I can take a kid and get more cerebral and game side. I don't have to teach him the basics, or not even the basics, the advanced and the fundamental. They're dominant by the time he gets done with them. So I just keep dipping into that pot. Like, thank you. You're doing a great job. The kid that's coming out of Georgia, I go, who are you? Where'd you come from? Not saying they can't do it. It's just I don't have that pool to feed from there. So. But anyway.
To touch on that one, I think it's so important to kind of, again, reiterate for those who didn't understand, it's important to make connections and to keep people on your side, right? You touched on it earlier, camps. I know for me, when I was growing up, camps was a great opportunity for me to do that, to network with other coaches that I don't normally get to see, that have their, job titles in different leagues and different programs. And that helped me kind of build out my branch. And again, hockey, when you get to a higher level, is a very, very small group of people. So everyone starts to know everybody. So if you don't do the things that are proper with Coach A, and Coach B calls Coach A to get his opinion, you better understand that Coach A is going to rely on that. And
100%.
If they're going to put their reputation out there to give you either a reference or a recommendation, it better be true, because this game is small. Just like you guys are climbing up the ladder, all of us as coaches want to climb the ladder too, and we want to keep our reputation. So who we pass along, who we have pretty much represent us is important. So make sure you guys understand the things that you do now today with the coaches that you guys are working with is going to probably be some of the biggest advocates that you have to help propel you up to the higher levels too.
Yeah. Quentin asked, if you didn't get drafted, do you still have a shot to make it? Absolutely, 100%. I'll use the kid's name, Guy Blessing, case in point. We didn't draft him in Omaha. Huh?
We had him on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I love the kid. Obviously, drafted him again. So, again, there's a situation, a kid that wasn't drafted, shows up in an open camp, runs the deck, makes a name for himself. At said open camp, or at the main camp, a high-profile Division I school, I won't say their name, the coach walks up to me. I've known him for 20-plus years since we were younger. And he's like, I want him. And I'm like, you're a high enough school that I want him to be there. Well, Air Force wants him. I didn't know this. So guys goes to Air Force for their little summer camp thing. And then Sarah Torrey calls me. He's like, tell me about the Blessing kid. I go, he's a stud. You're not going to get him. This school wants him. He's like, I want him. Well, then guy's like, this is my dream school. I want to go and work for NASA. And I'm going, because he showed up to a main camp. Had he not shown up, nobody would have heard about him. He would have played another year of high school, probably still wouldn't be on the map. He'd be reaching out like, can I come? But because he was seen at a showcase, showed up in an open camp, battled, stole spots, boom, boom, he's set. There's value into that. So even if you don't get drafted, absolutely, hell yes, you still have a shot to make teams. Happens all the time. You can't go to one and just go, screw it, I didn't make it, I'm done. No. Just because you didn't make this doesn't mean you're not going to make the next one. Like Jackson Liddy asked, with the null draft coming up in July, what steps can be taken to be drafted? So the reality is with the null draft, you're going to see a lot of, 2000s, 01s, 02s goalies being drafted most likely. You will see some 03s. In his case, he plays for a pretty decent AAA program. Obviously, I'm aware of him. The odds of getting drafted this year probably on the low side just because I believe you're in 03. That's not to say you won't make teams, but 03 is on the young side for that league. Obviously, the USHL draft's already happened. Now, the following year, in my opinion, in this young man situation, I think the odds are high just because I know who he is.
Yep.
I like him a lot. Like he's the one on the call that I'm saying he's going to be at Lincoln's main camp and, coming to St. Louis. So are there something that smaller goalies tend to do better than absolutely footwork? Carl Gehring, Jeff Lurd, both goalies, my age bracket, phenomenal footwork. Taller goalies tend to just sit and dump a lot. Smaller goalies, they have to be able to be agile and quick. Some of the taller goalies that I've worked with, it's ironic, I've worked with about 7 guys that are all 6'6" and higher in my career, the Ben Bishops, Akira's, Tyler Parks, these guys that are all monsters that when they do develop their footwork, they almost move themselves out of position because in that 6 feet, they're wider than 6 feet, so they don't need great footwork. The shorter guys got to be more mobile. In many ways, I kind of like the 6 foot, the 5'11", the 5'10", because the kid battles more. He can't just be a robot. So there's something to it. You could argue both ways. But smaller goalies, I think it's definitely footwork. I also notice a lot of smaller goalies are more aggressive on playing the puck. I don't know if it's a fact. I don't know if they do it because in the environments where I go to watch them, they do it to stand out more, which is great. So when I see that, naturally I make notes of it, but then I want to follow back and watch the kid again. And I want to watch him, not from where I normally stand because the kid knows I'm right there over his shoulders and he's showing off. The kid doesn't know I'm in the building and all of a sudden he doesn't play the puck. Then I'm like, oh, screw it. He just did it trying to win me over. So I want to sit there and map his 5-10 games. Is this consistent or was it a one-time thing? So there's that one.
Awesome. Jason, I want to thank you for coming on. I
Sure.
think it was just a wealth of knowledge. I hope our goalies got a lot out of it. Matt, any closing comments?
I think it's just awesome that we have the ability to do stuff like this. And, me and Jason have a little bit of a, 7 degrees of separation. His brother actually designed one of my masks after I was pretty much done. His brother's a graphic designer and created the one that I wear now playing men's league and charity events. So we had an opportunity to kind of cross paths earlier. But again, I just want to say how grateful I am to have such a knowledgeable coach with also a great resume and helping build our goalies to get to where they want to be. So thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Laurent?
Yeah, it was very awesome. Like I said, I learned a lot about the U.S. there. Really took some notes. No, it was absolutely great. And I think the few guys that I know in this call really enjoyed it too. And I'm just going to thank you for them. So
Awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And if anyone has any questions, Coach Power is on Instagram. He will definitely reach out to you. If you reach out to him, he's a great resource. His camp you're in St. Louis, correct?
Yes, St. Louis.
Still have openings?
We do.
Okay.
So about 10.
Okay, so there you go. He's got a great staff. So definitely be a good one because we honestly, Matt, we don't know what camps are going to hold yet. We get the question asked all the time and we just don't know. And as soon as we do, trust me, we will definitely let you know. In the meantime, this week coming up, Matt and I have our Zoom at 4:00 on Tuesday. Matt, who's our guest on Tuesday?
So this is going to be SJ Broad. So those who don't know or haven't been with me for too long, SJ and I pretty much grew up together in the same age group. We played juniors together. We went 2 different paths. I went NCAA. He went Division I club. And then we started coaching together. So he's going to be a great reference and a resource for us to kind of talk about the different paths. I know we've had a lot of guys on here, high-level juniors, high-level college. You know, I think he's going to be a good kind of segue to some of the other guys that may not want to dive all the way head first in the NCAA route and still have an opportunity to prolong their hockey careers and also get a good education.
Good stuff. So then also Tuesday at 5:30, we'll do our vision training Zoom. Wednesday, virtual synthetic skate at 5. If you don't have ice, grab your stick, glove pads, knee pads, and we'll do it on foot. And then next Sunday, we're back here at 7:30. We seem to have a trend with vertically challenged guys. I don't think we've had anyone over 5'9", and next week is no exception. We've got Brian Robinson, who is the goalie coach for Harvard University, is a director at Stop It Goaltending up in Marlboro. So next week's going to be another great week. Goalies, keep staying active. I think the message that you got is, you know, we have so much free time on our hands. Let's make sure we're using it, not wasting it. So many things you can be doing, especially on that stick handling. You know, Matt and I, we talk about it all the time. I posted a ton of drills with it. So let's get at it, and we'll see you all throughout the week. Be good, everyone. Take care.
Thanks for having me.